Introducing Fidelity Trader Plus, the next generation of advanced trading from Fidelity. Customize your tools and charts and access them seamlessly across desktop, web, and mobile. For faster trades, anywhere you go. Try the all-new Fidelity Trader Plus. Learn more about our most powerful trading platform yet at fidelity.com/trader plus. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE, SIPC.
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire. The empty seat. Who was actually just that, an empty chair in your office because you couldn't find someone to fill it. So it just sat there costing you money with all its fancy ergonomic features. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can make it easy to fill that seat with the right candidate, with nearly 60% of businesses finding someone to interview in the first week alone. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Hersey on this very momentous occasion. Yes?
Momentous occasion, 100 episodes? I didn't think we would get here, did you? I'm kidding.
Yes, we were the Wright brothers. We, got the thing aloft and it kept flying. Go figure.
Listen, I think that we've had a heck of a run for 100 episodes, but which begs me to ask you the question, Jim, if we're talking about Disney celebrations, do you have a favorite?
Oh, I think it would have to be Disneyland's 30th anniversary, because again, that was the one that I personally attended and that kind of kicked open my career for covering the company. I mean, it was a 30-hour long party held out in Anaheim, and this was the trip where, because I was there as a reporter, I got to walk the rooftops of Main Street, USA.
Wow.
And by the way, you don't want to be up on the 30-year-old rooftops of Main Street, USA. I looked at some of the oldest, weakest looking plywood up there and was thinking, I'm on top of the Emporium and I very soon will be down inside of the Emporium because this roof is about to give way. That one, because of just what I got to do and more to the point, who I got to meet on that trip is still my favorite. What about you? Do you have a favorite celebration or anniversary at Disney?
Well, from a merch perspective, the 100th, I really liked that aesthetic, the vibe. Disneyland 75th, because we actually got to be there to celebrate it. And I have to say that to me, the only real good thing that came out of the 50th for Magic Kingdom in Florida was the lights on Spaceship Earth. But I love an anniversary.
Okay. Well, now, speaking of which, what, Alice in Wonderland?
Yes, we're going to talk about a couple anniversaries. We've got Alice in Wonderland coming up. We've got Small World coming up, and we've got to dig a little bit more into these food relationships, because I mentioned on the last episode that people have thoughts and they want to talk about it no more. So we're just here for the peoples. But before we jump into it, thanks for being here with us for 100 episodes. And if you are liking the show and you want to help us keep her going, leave us a quick rating or review and tell us what you want to hear us talk about in the next 100, because there will be another 100, God willing.
Yep, starting on 101 next week. But of course, we wouldn't be here without our sponsor, and want to take a moment to acknowledge the very nice folks at unlockmagic.com, your go-to source for great deals on Disney and Universal tickets. And if a trip down to Central Florida is on your radar for 2026, head to unlockmagic.com and let their team help you make your next vacation to Central Florida just a little bit more magical. Okay, Now you were just talking about people and food and being excited and that sort of thing. And on a recent show, we talked about the Burger King Mandalorian collaboration, which got a lot of attention online, right?
Yes, and not for the reason you would think. Like, I was like, whoa, clearly people are just excited because they kind of took a page out of McDonald's book for the celebration that kicked off on May the 4th. And they had the big bounty box. And I mean, I had to go experience it on that day because this is where I'm at in my life, apparently. So I got the big bounty box, which would be the equivalent of a big kids meal. And it was like $23, and you got the bounty burger, and they had garlic chicken fries, then special sauce, and you got a Mando crown and a souvenir cup, and like they like really, really did it. But what people were chatting about was the comment you had made about how Burger King came to, get this collab versus McDonald's, and you had mentioned Toy Story. And so in the, hundreds of comments, somebody had mentioned that they saw that Papa John's is now teaming up with Disney for Toy Story 5, and like we just have to talk about it. Like, I'm sure you have thought, like, do you know anything?
Well, that's what's fascinating about this is the notion of, okay, so we have Toy Story 5 and McDonald's, so we got the burger end of the fast food chain nailed down. But this tells you a lot about how Disney wants to cover the waterfront, that, it's not enough to just have the burger end of the fast food spectrum covered. It's like, well, we also need to have a presence in the pizza space, and then to meet with all of the potential folks there and then decide, okay, Papa John's is who we want to be, our pizza guy, so to speak, during Toy Story 5. I mean, it just...
Do you remember, Jim, though, has there ever been, like, with the whole Pizza Planet of it all, has there ever been, like, a pizza sponsor of...
Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come step into centuries of history that await in Scotland. Castles steeped in legend walk along cobblestone streets. Come share the warmth of stories passed down through generations. This is a place with a past that is fully present today and all yours to explore. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
Of Toy Story?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, what's fascinating is if you talk pizza and animated films, like, for example, Eric and I over on the Epic Universal podcast have talked about the Land Before Time films. And what's kind of interesting is I want to say it was the first one. Pizza Hut did a series of the ugliest puppets known to man. But again, Mom, because kids really love dinosaurs, kept having to go back to Pizza Hut. It's like, I've only got 4 of the 5 puppets. Where's the little Brontosaurus? Give me the little Brontosaurus. That's the other interesting thing about Pizza Planet is you would think, given what a big component of the first Toy Story film, and more to the point, given how the little green alien men have just been part of, the world of Toy Story forever, just the whole notion of, why hasn't Disney done this before? Stepped into the pizza space, and and the weirdest part of that story is, Lauren, it's because they didn't own Pizza Planet. They didn't have a copyright on it. And, it's taken this long for Disney to get close enough to having a copyright. It's like, okay, this time for sure, we're doing pizza.
Oh, okay. So that makes so much sense. And so if you're curious about this one, there's not, the videos and stuff that are out about the collaboration, we've got a little bit of time before Toy Story 5 launches. But they are doing a big marketing push around it, and there's supposed to be exclusive fan experiences tied to the rollout. Obviously, like the box branding, they're going to have some special menu items. But this one makes sense to me also, like outside of the Pizza Planet tie, that like everybody is trying to tap in to different audiences. And you think like pizza, there has to be a lot of like, it's a family food, right? I'm tired on Friday. I'm not cooking. So now, like, what do you guys want? Oh, I want Toy Story pizza.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, no, you've nailed it in one, but at the same time, that this is a Disney company that is determined that when we finally get to the middle of June and Toy Story 5, steps into the space, which, by the way, previously, in Disney's mind, just as the audience starts to wane for The Devil Wears Prada 2, Mandalorian and Grogu comes along, and then just as the audience begins to wane for Mandalorian and Grogu, here's Toy Story 5. And by the way, this strategy has worked. I don't know, again, if you saw the news that just broke this week that Disney is the first studio in Hollywood in 2026 to achieve $2 billion in ticket sales at the box office so far for the year. So,
wow. See, they're doing something right. Now, looking at Toy Story merch, and we talked on the last episode about these collabs that are, more adult-centric. Like, I think they're just missing the boat totally if they don't have Balding Woody available for like 80s, 90s kids to purchase. Because if we all had the originals, I'm sure they'd be bald by now.
Well, actually, I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews so far with Tom Hanks, but Mr. Hanks has volunteered that. Oh, by the way, the bald Woody is only the beginning. You got to remember that. Sheriff Woody is not made of vinyl. Sheriff Woody is a cloth doll and, filled with stuffing. And when you get to see Woody in Toy Story 5, he's settled around the midsection. In fact, evidently, that's something that Buzz actually teases him about, that you're getting a little thick in the middle there. So he's not just bald, he's getting fat.
I love it so much.
Yep.
Like, it feels like we need a fat, bald Woody in our lives.
There we go.
Oh, yes. All right. So moving on, I've talked before about, going on to things like the perks.disneyplus.com and going on D23 and just, seeing what's out there. And I was on the D23 website. And before I get it to Alice, I have to tell you, did you know that with D23, you can get 20% off any stay at the Swan at Disney World, like of the Swan and Dolphin?
Interesting. I did not know that. Wow. Okay.
And it was just about like the time, because I didn't even tell you yet, Jim, but Eric and I are doing just the two of us going down to Disney for the, I think, second week of June. His brother is going to be there on a work trip to experience Star Wars. And so I was looking for room rates and stuff, and it's just a bonus trip. And I saw that, so I was looking at the Swan, and we got Helios at Epic for $250 because of Chris Cox's recommendation of like continuing to check on the Epic Universal podcast. So I'm like paying it forward. Like if anybody's going, go look and get your Swan discount. And it was legit. It was $191 a night to stay at the Swan.
Wow.
Through D23.
Okay. The downside is it's still the Swan, but that's
it's still the Swan.
The Swan. But no, right there in the center of the action. Okay, cool.
Heck yeah. So anyways, Helios and the Swan. But while I was on the site, I saw that Alice in Wonderland is having an anniversary. 75 years?
Yeah.
Jim?
And Alice, Walt didn't necessarily love Alice. Well, I mean, you have to understand that he had been working on Alice forever. In fact, if you want to see something genuinely interesting, folks, here's what you want to do. You want to Google Mary Pickford and Alice in Wonderland. Because what you'll see is an image of the very first silent screen star, the Tom Cruise of her era. But she's dressed in an Alice in Wonderland dress, and she's holding a Mickey Mouse doll because she was trying to convince Walt Disney that, sound cartoons were coming in and or sound film was coming in, and Mary was having trouble transitioning over. And what she wanted to do was do a live-action animated film where she was going to play Alice, and Disney was going to animate all of the characters that she meets in Wonderland. And, Mary was so determined to do this, and she was honestly one of the richest women in Hollywood at the time, that she was going to front the money to the effect of, Walt, you animate it, I'll pay for it. And unfortunately, Lauren, if you look at the photograph of Mary holding the Mickey Mouse doll, you see what Walt saw, which was a middle-aged woman. And Walt was like, I don't think this is going to work. It's a wonderful idea, but I don't think audiences are going to be all that enthusiastic about seeing a middle-aged Mary Pickford pretending to be, a 10-year-old girl. And he, had to find a very polite way to turn her down, which was tough because at that time, United Artists, the company that Mary owned, was the one distributing Disney's animated films. So it's, how do you politely let down the boss?
But I think that, that was something. But now, Alice is culturally relevant. So I was looking at timing, I'm connecting the dots. So there was this sold-out screening through D23 where they were restoring the film, and they were, loading it with archival extras and deleted scenes, storybook concepts, all that stuff. And then, a newly discovered song that was Cheshire Cat? Is that new?
Well, again, Alice, when it was being produced at the studio, you have to understand, they were working on Alice as early as the late 30s as a standalone feature. David Hall was going to be directing it. In fact, there's a couple of amazing books that are filled with just the storybook art from that version of Alice. And then the war happened and the film got put on hold, and they eventually put it back into production in the late 40s. But they had written dozens of songs, Lauren. And so in this case, I'm awed. The thing was that, the Cheshire Cat, as animated by Ward Kimball, was such a vivid character. It's like he should have his own song. But it's kind of the case with a lot of Disney films. You have wonderful characters, like, for example, Jafar from Aladdin. They made 3 different runs at trying to give Jafar his own song in that movie, and part of the reason for that was Jonathan Freeman, the gentleman who voiced Jafar, was a Tony Award winning performer, and just the notion of he should sing, and it's like, yeah, but the movie doesn't lend itself to that character singing, and that was kind of the same thing with the Cheshire Cat. So, they had this song, which I want to say for one of the re-releases of Alice back in the early 2000s, Jim Cummings, the voice of Winnie the Pooh, who again, was originally voiced by Sterling Holloway, who also voiced the Cheshire Cat. Jim sang the song for the first time, and you listen to it and you go, yeah, I understand why that's not in the movie. But then
how, so can you tell me what's going on with this, reimagined Sabrina Carpenter version of Alice in Wonderland? And is that Universal? And it's a musical, right?
Well, okay. Yes, but remember, this is Sabrina Carpenter, a talented young lady that look what she just did with the Muppet Pilot, which, by the way, we're still waiting to find out.
Come on, Disney, give us more Muppets.
Because it's worth noting that they did just announce the ABC schedule for the 2026-2027 season, and worth noting that the revival of Scrubs got picked up for a second season, so. And if what Drew Taylor has shared, there have been scripts written for new Muppet episodes, and it's like, okay, so when do we actually turn the key on that? Come on, Josh, step up, let's go. But yeah, I mean, look, Alice is one of those things that just lends itself. Every generation sort of circles around on it, and I'm not going to lie, I especially enjoyed it, at least the first Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland with Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter.
Yeah, same.
And not necessarily as big a fan of the follow-up, but no, I always enjoy revisiting those characters in that world and seeing what filmmakers do with it. So good for Sabrina for taking on this project. But,
yeah, she's like producing and starring in it. I mean, she does very much look like Alice.
Yep.
But so this is a merch podcast, and I'm like, all right, 75th anniversary. There's a new film in the making. There really was not a lot of merch.
I'm not gonna lie. One of the very first thing you shared here, the quilted bag from the Bradford Exchange.
Yeah.
I'm keeping this away from Nancy.
I do love that. That's why I had to include it.
She would, again, we have entirely too many bags here at the house, but that one, that's a great looking bag.
What about this weird ornament, Jim? I don't understand it. The 75th. Can you walk people through what you're seeing?
Oh, well, I mean, this is actually a scene from the Disney animated film that Alice goes to the White Rabbit's house. He keeps calling her Marianne. He thinks he's the young girl who helps him at his house, and tells Marianne to go in and get his gloves. And Marianne goes in, and again, remember, one of the key components of the Alice in Wonderland tag, is the bottle that says "Drink me" and the cake that says "Eat me." And Alice consumed a little bit of the cake and suddenly grows to the point that her legs have gone out the front door and the back door, and she's looking through the front window of the house. So this is a recreation of that moment from the movie. So something you could hang on your tree and confuse your grandchildren.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might get scarred if you don't know what you're looking at.
Well, that's to be honest, there's a lot of images like that in Disney's Alice in Wonderland, which again is another reason why this film is kind of second tier feature animation for the company.
Yeah, well, if we're talking anniversaries, talk birthdays real quick. We know that it is America's 250th birthday, and Disney would not miss an opportunity to cash in on some merch. So it just started showing up in the theme parks this week, and it is one big just Americana collection. So you're going to get things that say like Happy 250, Celebrate America 250. We know we're getting the Soarin' ride film.
Speaking of which, that's what I've been hearing from folks at Epcot. To the effect of, there's a teeny tiny itty bitty gift shop to the left of Soaring, when you step into the queue and march toward the three theaters. And evidently a lot of this merch will be showing up there, but the central shop at Epcot, it is where you really want to go if you're looking for this stuff.
Okay, good to know. And I did see, I think it was even maybe just today, that it's showed up at the Emporium.
There we go.
But there's some cute stuff. They did a new baseball jersey, the little mini monorail with the... I don't know, would you say like an Abe Lincoln kind of big American hat, beach, I don't know. But check it out. And this came out same time as the 60th anniversary for our collector friends for Small World. Check out these pins, Jim.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you kind of zeroed in on this because Mr. Schul and Mr. Testa and I, for the next Disney Unpacked, we're working on a story about the history of It's a Small World, and it was so fascinating that. Well, again, I don't know if you know the Small World story, but February of 1963 is when the Pepsi-Cola company comes to Disney because 3 other companies have previously tried to create a pavilion for UNICEF, which Pepsi is going to sponsor at the 64 World's Fair, and they can't. None of them have delivered the goods, and so they go to Disney, and the gentleman, Admiral Joe Fowler, the gentleman who's in charge of Disneyland, he's the one who gets the call. And he's like, "Oh, I would love to be able to help you. It's a great cause, but it's February and the fair opens in April, of next year. And there's just not enough time for us to do a decent job. So, we'll politely pass." And Lauren, the very next Monday, they're having a staff meeting at WED, and Walt is driven over from the studio, and Admiral Joe is just going through the week's business, and he mentions in passing, oh yeah, and Pepsi reached out and they wanted us to do their UNICEF pavilion for the 64 World's Fair, and I told them that there wasn't enough time. We were already too busy. We're doing 3 shows, and he looks up and there's an angry Walt Disney across the table from him, and it's like, what did I do wrong? And it's like, I'm the one who decides what we do and do not do around here. And you get on the phone and you tell Pepsi that we'll do their UNICEF pavilion. And so they again, you got to understand the Small World's catchphrase was the happiest voyage that ever sailed, and it only exists today. And we're only celebrating its 60th anniversary because Admiral Joe Fowler really pissed off Walt Disney.
Well, thanks for that. I have to ask, so this first pin, it says it's the Mary doll?
Yes!
Like, is that a thing, or is it based off Mary Blair?
There we go.
What is the Mary doll?
Yes, the Mary Blair doll. And in fact, what's kind of interesting, if you know where to look in It's a Small World, there are dolls that honor the designers of this ride. Like, for example, there's a Joyce Carlson doll hidden up in one of the balloons. Again, you got to understand that this thing was done under such pressure, and Walt brought in his A-team to work on this thing. Mark and Alice Davis, Mary Blair, Claude Coates, and they had so little time. This one has so many inside jokes and so many tributes and that sort of thing. So it's kind of nice for the 60th that some of the stuff is being not only walked out but turned into merch.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that Disney is thinking that, I don't know, there's going to be merch pirates, or that like they're going to sell out, because you can see in the picture here that it says login required to purchase on both of the pin options. So the first one is the Mary doll, and that's your primary for $21.99. And then there's a blind box, which is like the happiest crew that ever sailed.
There we go.
So that represents, children from around the world, and you're going to get 2 of those. And it's $34.99, but you have to log in to buy either one of those options.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to lie. This kind of makes me happy because the speculators so often step into this space, and especially for pin collectors who, something like this where it's a 60th anniversary of a much beloved attraction, they're going to really be chasing these pins, trying to, complete a set. And what Disney's trying to do here is, and again, back to Mr. DeMauro, what he was talking about with the earnings call about, fan interaction, the notion of you want a complete set. We don't want you necessarily paying top dollar to a speculator. We want you reaching out to another collector and trading. And having
because that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, having a fun experience. I'm going to say this, Lauren, though, if you get the opportunity to steer miles away from collecting the 60th anniversary small world pins, do it, because there's going to be a lot of competition for these. And
yeah, they're really nice.
They are.
Like
They're
I
charming.
am thinking about hopping on and getting him the Mary doll, because this is not like Alice in Wonderland where I couldn't find anything. There was actually a whole article on the Parks blog. And there's a whole collection of 60th anniversary merch for Small World outside of the pins. There's some bags and ears and shirts and purses. So I think, the women, I think we like the aesthetics of Small World too. And I think that this is going to be a really popular line for the anniversary.
And again, it's just nice that Disney is acknowledging the 60th here, and again, it as you'll find out if you come back to the show we're doing for Patreon. I mean, this is an attraction that traveled the world. In fact, the only park that doesn't have a Small World in it yet is Shanghai. Though supposedly...
What are they waiting for?
Well, interesting you bring that up. 10th anniversary of the opening of Shanghai is June. And what's kind of interesting is evidently in the language for that resort, basically part of the deal was if Disney's going to build a second theme park, they have to announce it within 10 years. So we're coming up on that window, and I don't know if you saw the weird little piece of concept art that bubbled up a couple of weeks ago, but it looks like for a companion to Shanghai Disneyland, there's a new Epcot in the works.
Ooh. You think we're going to get some Westcott stuff?
Well, actually, what we're going to get, if the stories I've been hearing are true, picture this. How when you go to Epcot today, if you go around to the back, you get Paris by way of Pixar's Ratatouille. Mm-hmm. So picture a World Showcase like that, where, you get the Mexican pavilion, only you get it celebrating Coco.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. I hope that happens.
Yeah, so it's a notion of an Epcot, but from day one, Norway is about Frozen. And, from day one, Coco is baked into Mexico, and, they have a Tropical Americas area that features Encanto, and you get the idea. It's a fun version of World Showcase, so in a way you get you get a small world of sorts,
Yes.
Go figure.
I mean, they could throw that in there, just bringing them all together.
There we go.
It's like Harmonious, but for a ride. Just
There we
saying.
go.
If you're listening. But anyway, so when we get back, Jim is going to continue the feature on
the story of Go.com and how it didn't go.com. But before we do that, there's this.
Gold Bond knows that when your skin feels good, you feel good. So look after it day and night and make Gold Bond Healing Lotion your go-to. It's clinically shown to visibly heal and moisturize dry skin in just one use. We all deserve soft, healthy-looking skin every day, so choose a trusted brand with proven results. Gold Bond Healing Lotion. Buy yours now at walmart.com.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
This episode is brought to you by Truly Hard Seltzer. We're always in touch, but nothing beats actually being together. This summer, grab a Truly Hard Seltzer. Light, bubbly, fruity, and make your dreams come truly. Truly is the official hard seltzer of U.S. Soccer. Visit trulyhardseltzer.com/locations to find Truly near you. Hard Seltzer Beverage Company, LLC, Boston, Massachusetts. Hard Seltzer, 5% alcohol by volume. Please drink responsibly. 21 plus only.
And we're back. Okay, so continuing last week's feature, which was looking back at Go.com, Disney's attempt at creating a catch-all portal for the corporation. And just to recap here, Disney officially launched the Go network, which operated out of the Go.com domain January of '99. This portal was a joint venture between the Walt Disney Company and InfoSeek, and it was trying, to duplicate the success of other popular web portals like Yahoo and AOL. And with the notion of creating Disney, content related to Disney-owned properties like ESPN and ABC. Didn't go well. They launched January of '99. Disney officially shuts down the Go network search engine and the core portal aspects of its network in early 2001, so barely 2 years there. And what was kind of interesting is, I got a lot of mail from folks in regard to last week's show, and who were upset that I'd gone after Disney. Because specifically I'd said that Disney is bad at tech, and Annabelle C. reached out and said, Disney's bad at tech? The company that invented audio animatronics? I mean, have you seen the Walt in the Opera House at Disneyland? Disney is great at tech, and they have been so for decades. And, okay. And Annabelle, of course, is talking about the Walt Disney A Magical Life show, which debuted at that park as part of Disneyland's 70th anniversary. How do we talk about this? For me, what's kind of interesting about the Walt A Magical Life show, we didn't get this till after, both Diane Disney Miller, Walt's daughter, she died in December of 2013, whereas her husband, Ron Miller, by the way, longtime official at Walt Disney Production in the 70s and 80s. We lost Ron in February 2019, and it's significant that we didn't get an animatronic Walt till after those two were gone, because they were quite vocal about they didn't want that in the park. Now, what was interesting is Disney has had the rights to do whatever the hell they want with Walt since 1982. Kind of interesting, that was the year that the company bought Redlaw's transportation division. They had an interesting thing. Walt had privately owned Disneyland's monorail and railroad. And he also, as part of that corporation, was making money off of Disneyland by licensing his name, his signature, and his likeness to the park. And the Disney company, bought that particular thing away from Redlaw in 1982. And it's not like we haven't had Walt in things. For example, there was that TV movie, the Annette Funicello story, A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Make, that ran on CBS back in October of 1995. And how many of you remember watching that and seeing Len Cariou as Walt Disney in that? And I don't know how many of you watch Blue Bloods, the long-running CBS show that recently ended a 10-year, 12-year run on that network. But Len Cariou played, who is it? Henry Regan, the retired police commissioner, Tom Selleck's dad, on that show. Me, on the other hand, I remember seeing Mr. Cariou on Broadway in the original stage version of Sweeney Todd. I went down to New York and saw that in 1979 at the Eras Theater. There was also, I don't know how many of you remember when Disney did the 100 Years of Magic that started in 2001 and was celebrated, Walt's birth. It was 100, he would have been 100 years old. That was the conceit. So it's 100 Years of Magic. And there was the Share a Dream Come True parade at the Magic Kingdom, and on the first float that kicked off that parade, there was a Walt lookalike at a drawing table on that float, just sort of signifying how it all began. And of course, there was Tom Hanks, who played Walt Disney in Saving Mr. Banks, arrived in theaters in 2013. By the way, I really liked that film. I thought they did a great job. And Mr. Hanks particularly did a very good Walt Disney. But this animatronic Walt Disney is coming to Florida, for those of you who haven't heard. Walt Disney World's version of the Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress is supposed to reopen this summer, in fact, with a brand new introductory scene where a version of the Walt animatronic, the one that's at the Opera House and on Main Street in Anaheim, will be here in Florida. But here's the thing, Annabelle. I'm old. I have been covering the Disney company as an entertainment writer for over 40 years now. I started back in 1985 with Disneyland's 30th birthday party being basically my first press event. And look, Disney has always been adventurous with tech. I mean, I remember even back that year, 1985, how, talking with folks at the studio about, they really thought Black Cauldron would have done better in theaters if they had been able to pull off that hologram effect, which was supposed to feature a moment in the film where, a cauldron born was supposed to effectively step off the screen and hover over the theater. But, that was kind of the flavor of the week, technology-wise, at Disney at the time. I mean, I remember talking with Imagineers about Journey into Imagination and how there was supposed to be the hologram effect in that ride where you were supposed to see Figment pouring a rainbow, a three-dimensional rainbow formed by a hologram into a pond in that sort of paper cutout room in the ride. And in both cases, the Black Cauldron and Journey into Imagination, they just couldn't make the hologram work on a predictable level. But that's the thing. Disney tries tech, but when it doesn't work or succeed as the company hopes it would, Disney behaves like what it is, and that's a Hollywood studio. And when a movie doesn't do well over its opening weekend, you immediately bury the body. You pull advertising on Monday morning. You make sure your mistakes disappear quickly. And in fact, this was, and Disney is still doing this. I mean, Tron Ares last year. We're recording this now, May of 2026, May of 2025 at this time. Disney was already heavily hyping Tron Ares, which again was going to be the third Tron movie. Remember, the original came out in the summer of '82. We got Tron Legacy in December of 2010. And, what everyone was saying at the studio, we got it right this time. This is our Wrath of Khan. This is the movie that's going to make it so we can do a new Tron movie every 2 years or 3 years. It had a $180 million budget, had an opening weekend of only $33 million in ticket sales in North America. And the company quickly pulled back from that franchise. But on the other hand, if you're doing tech in the parks, for example, how many of you remember those magical moment pins? We were just talking a moment ago about 100 Years of Magic in 2001. These were those pins, big, heavy, bulky pins that lit up when you were on certain rides or, when a parade went by or that sort of thing. And just a year or so after that, we then got, do you remember My Pal Mickey That's 2003. So for those of you who never got to see My Pal Mickey, it was a 10.5-inch tall plush loaded with tech. In fact, this thing could say 700 location-based sayings. Wherever you were in the park, it had things to say. It also knew what day of the year it was. It knew what time it was. For example, it could tell you, "Hey, it's 3:00. We should probably go find the parade." And in fact, I remember talking with poor Jim Cummings, who had recorded all 700 of these things, and the marathon length sessions in the booth to get all of this stuff down. But it was kind of miraculous. It would, for example, when you were in Epcot, it would say things like, "Hey, I hear that Belle is in France. Let's go say hi." And it would have literally known that this is when the character greeting with the characters from Beauty and the Beast was happening in France. It also, again, December 25th, if you started it up at home, it would wish you a Merry Christmas. But here's the thing, that it was primarily built to work in the parks. And again, it's a 10.5-inch tall plush doll, and the parks are loud. So in order to hear Mickey, you have to have him really close to your face. And remember, you're in Orlando, which is warm most times of the year. But picture it's a hot August, afternoon, and you've got your My Pal Mickey, and you're trying to listen to what he says. So you're pushing this doll right into your big sweaty face, which is why, Mickey began to smell after a while. Look, My Pal Mickey, because of various issues, again, introduced in 2003, discontinued in 2008, but he still worked in the park, just wasn't on sale. And finally, the company had to announce in 2014, by the way, we're going to be shutting down all the infrared sensors in the parks that let Mickey know where he is. So, sorry, but some of the stuff that Disney did wasn't quite as ambitious as My Pal Mickey. Take for example, Glow with the Show, those Mickey ears that were introduced in 2012. So your headgear could be synced up with the show that was happening out on Paradise Bay, World of Color at DCA, and then of course we got MagicBands. But here's the thing, Len and I got a hold of a PowerPoint presentation for MagicBands about 6 months before they were introduced in the parks in 2013. And we saw everything that Disney had planned for MagicBands. And look, this would have transformed your Disney theme park experience. I mean, I made it seem truly magical. I mean, for example, how it was going to change character greetings. I mean, picture this. You're going into Royal Fairy Tale Hall at the Magic Kingdom. Your daughter is wearing her magic band. She enters the room, and Cinderella greets her by name. It's like, "Alice, hey, how are you?" And, your daughter rushes into Cinderella's arms, and it's like, "Oh, so nice of you to come all the way from Long Beach, California. And have you been having fun? I mean, you've been here since Tuesday, right?" And it was one of these things where Cinderella would know things about you she shouldn't know. And the way she would do that is because this information was being shared to the Magic Band. And in turn, as your child entered the room, there was a discrete television corner in the corner of the room that Cinderella could, the performer playing the face character could, look at and quickly access this info. I mean, who's taking care of Fluffy at home while you're here? Things like that. And little kids love this during the playtest. Evidently, parents, on the other hand, were horrified. It's just like, is Cinderella looking at my daughter's bedroom window at night? And there was also the retail aspect of it. I mean, for example, one of the things you were supposed to be able to do at home was, if you were going to the Magic Kingdom during your trip, you would be prompted as you checked in for your Disney World vacation. It's like, "Oh, you have a Magic Band. Would you like to see your very own Small World doll on the ride. And you'd be, if you said yes, you'd then be sent to a separate website where, out of a kit of parts, you could form a small world doll. And what would then happen, you then lock it into the system, and whenever you rode the ride over the course of your Disney World vacation, as your boat entered the grand finale, at one point you would pass a column that for every other boat, a load of tourists it just seemed like a flat column. But when you approached it, it would suddenly come to life. You would realize, oh, that's a flat screen. And then projected on the flat screen was a CG version of the doll you had created, and now it's dancing, and it's like, hey, that's my doll. And by the way, to make sure that you knew that this was happening, your magic band would vibrate like, hey, dummy, look up, your doll's here. But at the same time, Disney being Disney, it's like, oh, by the way, if you want to commemorate the doll that you created for Small World, you can go to the separate website and get a coffee mug with the doll on it, or a mouse pad, or a T-shirt. And there were other aspects of Magic Bands. I mean, for example, for the park operations side, there was supposed to be an aspect of, maybe in the past week or so you've heard about Blue Dot Fever, what's going on with concerts all over the country, and how some of them are getting canceled because they're not selling enough tickets in advance. Well, at the Disney theme parks, Blue Dot Fever would have been, there would have been a cast member in a room looking at a map of the Disney, for example, the Magic Kingdom, and looking at the map going, wow, that's a lot of people in Frontierland right now. And, okay, let's send some more churro carts out. Let's send some more soft drink carts out. Let's get some more street entertainers out there. Anyway, Magic Bands got developed because Disney Fast Pass, by the way, introduced July of '99. That was very successful. Also expensive. Back in the day, it cost $1 million for every single Fast Pass distribution point that was installed in the parks. And but the thinking was, we're going to get that money back because people who were not in line, they're out shopping, they're buying food, or we could push them to a less popular attraction. And in fact, that's a part of FastPass I don't think a lot of people understand, is that in a way it was a throwback to when the Disney parks had ticket books, because what those did is they evenly distributed people around the parks. I mean, for example, the passport system didn't come online till June of 1982. In fact, the very first annual passes, they didn't go on sale till a year after that, June of 83. But the passports fundamentally changed the way people used the parks. They didn't have to spend the tickets that they got in their book, that they bought outside, look at them and go, okay, I only have 2, e-tickets. So where am I going? Am I going to Mansion? Am I going to Pirates? The passport, which got you onto every single ride whenever you wanted to go on it. It's like, well, hell, I can spend the entire day in line for Mansion if I want. More to the point, I don't have to. There were tickets in the book that, it's like, hey, you got a C ticket here. You want to go on the Columbia. People didn't have to do that anymore. But again, downside of FastPass is that people who were not standing in line were now out in the streets. And yes, they were going to shop, or they were going to go eat, but it also weirdly made the park feel busier than it actually was. And and that's the thing. Sometimes perception is reality. And by the way, bit of reality here, folks. We're a podcast. We got to stop for commercials every now and then. So let's take a quick ad break, and then we'll get back to this story.
Hey, how are you? Ready to go for a run?
Running connects us to a rush of energy that flows through our world. The cheers of friends that unlock a new gear within us. The intersection of interests that inspires a run crew. The support that gets you over the finish line. Connection is why we move forward and what inspires us to keep going. Let's run there. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
You may think you know McDonald's drinks, but you don't know them like this. From fruity refreshers like the Strawberry Watermelon Refresher and the Mango Pineapple Refresher with popping boba, to crafted sodas like the Sprite Berry Blast with berry-flavored Sprite topped with cold foam. Who knew ice-cold drinks could be so fire? 6 all-new drinks are here. Try them all, now at McDonald's. Refreshers contain caffeine.
And we're back. Okay, so we were just talking about Annabelle, the email she sent about Disney and tech and how nobody does it better. It's like, well, again, I'm old. So I remember things like the Secret Lab, that CG thing that Disney set up in October of 99. That's when Disney's own in-house computer graphics unit, they merged with DreamQuest. And the worry at that point was that Disney needed to develop something that could go head-to-head with Pixar when they left to go do their own thing. So Disney did a CG film. I don't know how many of you remember Dinosaur from 2000. That didn't do all that well, and Disney ultimately shuttered the Secret Lab in October of 2001. But one of the things that came out of that, because one arm of Disney is working on something and another arm of Disney notices. So Disney, the Imagineers, saw that Disney had this dinosaur movie in the works, and they were working on their living character initiative program at this point, and this is when Lucky the Dinosaur gets developed, the autonomous walking character. That debuts in the parks in August of 2003. Not as successful as Disney had hoped. On the other hand, the show that came on the heels of Lucky the Dinosaur, Total Talk with Crush, that debuts in November of 2004. That did well enough that it's still in the parks today. And the lesson Disney took is that people coming to the Disney parks want to interact with the characters, though they also wouldn't mind interacting with them at home, which brings us to the gaming space. And how many of you remember Epic Mickey? Debuted back in November of 2010, or its sequel, Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two, that showed up in November of 2012. Me personally, the one that I miss, Disney Infinity, that didn't show up till August of 2013. And, I'm not going to lie, I didn't play Disney Infinity, but I loved the sculpts of the figures. In fact, I keep thinking, I've got a bunch of them here at the house, and I want to fill out my collection. But again, Disney discontinued Disney Infinity in May of 2016. So what's fascinating is every so often art will leak out for Wave 4, the other movies and such that they were going to touch on, and those figures look spectacular. But there's a pattern here. Disney jumps into new tech-related efforts with both feet. They spend big dough to launch a show, a project, and then when it doesn't make enough money, Disney backs away. And which brings me to what Josh D'Amaro said at the most recent quarterly earnings call, and he was talking about how new efforts are underway to turn Disney Plus. Well, you have to understand what Josh told the financial community was that while the Disney parks are essentially the physical center of the company, what Disney is looking forward to doing now is turning Disney Plus into the immersive, interactive, digital centerpiece of the company. With the idea that these two, the parks and Disney Plus, will become increasingly connected. And what was interesting is Josh said, look, we have these passionate, loyal fans, but the interesting thing is, there are millions of people who subscribe to Disney Plus who don't go to the parks. And so that they're looking to deepen that relationship through content. And again, you got to remember that this is kind of the same language they used back in 1998 when they were launching the Go network and doing the thing with InfoSeek. And here's the thing: Disney's not as good at this as they think they are. How many of you people over the weekend saw the story about that thing at the Disneyland, related to Mandalorian and Grogu, that where Pedro Pascal showed up in Black Spire Outpost, and in fact he was in a full Mando outfit and revealed his helmet, and and all of these supposed Disneyland visitors lost their minds. And unfortunately, what happened is that Disney got caught. After the fact, it was discovered that, well, these weren't actually average day guests at Disneyland. These were actually influencers that Disney had specifically invited to the park to be part of this moment. And, there was nothing in that video that said as such. These are our invited guests having this special moment that we have stage managed. And Disney got caught after the fact. It was kind of embarrassing for them. They were shooting for a viral moment, but they didn't want it to go viral for this reason. I don't know. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Annabelle, I'm old. I've been doing this for 40 years. So, I certainly in this economy don't want anybody to lose their job. But looking back to what happened with Go.com and InfoSeek, it's important to remember that Disney launched in 99, and by January of 2001, they're already shutting this down. They're taking an $80 million loss on the project, and they're laying off 400 employees that were working hard to create a Yahoo-like portal at Disney. And then Disney President Bob Iger interviewed about what was going on with Go.com, just flat out said, we made a mistake. We were wrong. We couldn't attract enough consumers, even with the might and the marketing clout of the rest of the company. And what was particularly painful is we couldn't attract enough advertising revenue. So, again, kind of startling to have a Disney's president talk that plainly. But anyway, I hope that Josh tomorrow, with what he's trying to do now with Disney Plus and its digital footprint, it just takes a lesson from what happened with Go.com and InfoSeek. And the lesson is Disney isn't as good at tech as they think they are. And I'm sorry, Annabelle, if that upsets you. But anyway, I'm sure that Lauren and I will talk more about this in the future. And speaking of Lauren, let's bring her back into the show now.
Okay, Jim. Well, on that note, I think it's time we close up shop today for our 100th episode and maybe go take a nap.
Well, yes, nap. Excellent idea. But on the other hand, folks, if you want to keep up on everything happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, please follow us on social.
Yes, and if you have a question or an idea for a future episode, reach out to us. We love to hear from you. Jim is at jimhillmedia.com, and I'm at laurenhersey.com. And that does it for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.